Hi, people that are starting to join already. So, hi everyone. I won't do a full introduction yet because I'll just let people start joining. But there will be 2 poll questions that will be popping up on your screen, which you can answer. That's completely anonymous, but it's just good because we'll get the results live. But it will be completely anonymous. I still think there's quite a few people joining, so I'll just give it sort of a couple more minutes. It's nice, I can see names popping up and it's all familiar names, people that I know are coming on, which is nice to see you guys. So the poll that first came up was like, how do you feel, does your organisation, do you feel they're committed to diversity, equity and inclusion? And 29% strongly agree, 59% agree, only 6% disagree and 6% strongly disagree. Which is kind of good to see the majority agree or strongly agree. So the second poll question should come up now. So let's give it a couple more minutes for people to answer the poll questions. Okay, cool. So this poll question was, does your company's recruitment tools, are they effective at helping you find diverse candidates within your organisation? So 8% strongly agree, 50% agree, 15% disagree, and 0% strongly disagree, and then 27% are not sure. So that's quite interesting actually, because a lot of people aren't sure about that. So that's something that we'll talk about as well on this panel. So I'll go ahead. I think we've got quite a few people on now, but I know there will still be people joining throughout because I know it's sort of just finishing work. So welcome everybody here. So welcome to our webinar, Inclusivity Matters, Diversity within Accountancy and Finance, which is in collaboration with the Financial Executives Networking Group. So I'm Perrin, I'm from Broadgate Search, which is part of Trenovo Group. And today we will be discussing DE&I within Accountancy and Finance, which is, as you guys will probably know, a vast and industry-agnostic career path. It brings up, Accountancy and Finance does bring up more than just the usual DE&I discussions, sort of around gender or race, but also there's a lot to talk about sector background, route to qualification and qualification itself. We're going to discuss all of that as much as we can within the hour. We've got quite a lot to get through. I suppose as well as a bit of a disclaimer, within this discussion, we're going to talk about different qualifications and things like that, but it's not to discredit any qualifications or training schemes that we all kind of have gone through or people have gone through, but more to just raise awareness around what the finance function is today and how finance teams can add value and why DE&I is important to that. And also sort of more generally, how we can foster inclusion despite sector background or qualification or any background really. So yeah, the poll question should have all been answered by now, and I will now go to the panel to introduce themselves. So I'll start with Nadine.
Afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to this panel this evening, Perrin. So I'm Nadine Dyer. I am a Respect and Inclusion Manager within our financial advisory service line within Deloitte. I'm also the chair of our multicultural network, and I sit on our firm's ethnicity council. Thank you.
Thanks, Nadine. Really good to have you. And next I go to Dowda.
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here. I'm Dowda, and I lead the group finance operations at BRIT. I also serve on its I&D committee. My career spans over 15 years of experience across different industries, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Dowda. And then next, Sean.
Hi, I'm Sean Mccarthy. I'm the treasurer of FANG, the Financial Executives Networking Group, that is very active in the Greater London market and in the UK market. I am a group treasurer, treasury consultant, and have worked in Great Britain and Europe for the last 20 odd years. So.
Amazing. And last but not least, Bianca.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Perrin, for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. I'm Bianca. I'm the CFO of Salary Finance in the UK. We offer financial products via salary reduction as part of financial wellbeing strategies for employers. Great to be here.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for joining, guys. It's really a pleasure and I'm really looking forward to it. We've obviously had a few discussions ourselves beforehand and they've been great. So I hope this is just as good. So yeah, the first question, coming right back to you, Bianca, that I wanted to start off with is why is it important that we discuss diversity, equity and inclusion within accountancy and finance, particularly related to the evolving nature of what finance teams need to add to businesses?
Yeah, so I think if I start with the part about what it is that the finance function needs to deliver for the business, I think, it's kind of probably across every industry now, like it's not okay to just deliver the basics and do the transactional work and deliver the management accounts. Like you have to be value add as a finance function, particularly because technology has kind of come into kind of displace or make more efficient a lot of that transactional work. So really what people are looking to the finance function for is insight and intelligence. And so you're not just working with the financials, you're often also working with KPIs. It's not unusual for actually business intelligence functions to sit under finance or within finance. So that's kind of, where I would think that the expectations of the finance team lie. And certainly within salary finance, within our FP&A team, we have strategy and finance analysts because we expect to be influencing the strategy of the business. So their job isn't just to put together some financial models or a forecast. It's to really understand how things work, business partner with other functions, and spot opportunities for us to grow faster, drive better returns. It's that kind of forward-thinking mentality. And so to get the best results there, I think you can't really do that without diversity. And by that, I mean this sort of diversity of thought. So, what's I think commonly called cognitive diversity, but really sort of approaching a problem from different perspectives. And I think it's difficult to achieve that if actually everyone in the team kind of comes from exactly the same background, looks, talks, thinks the same. That's not really what you want, because you'll have a bunch of people who have the same blind spots, or at worst they have the same blind spots, but I think you're also kind of missing opportunities as well. So maybe they perform okay, but actually what is it that you're not getting by having a more diverse group of people? And then I kind of think it's a virtuous cycle. Like you in order to have a diverse team, to sort of retain and create a diverse team, you need to practice inclusion, because people won't stay in a team where they don't feel like they're really part of it, even if you do manage to hire more diversely. And sort of equity kind of goes with that as well. So there's sort of, you know, if you practice equity and inclusion, that helps foster that kind of diverse environment. That's my take on it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Bianca. That's a really good point that I think we'd made in the past as well, around sort of diversity of thought and how the inclusivity brings that as well. Because if you feel included and you feel like you're part of the team, you'll speak up about what you think maybe should change, you know, that kind of thing. And then it's great. There's more innovation. And so next, kind of following on from that topic a little bit, Sean, I was going to you. So obviously, when we speak of diversity within finance, this isn't just diversity of gender, race, sexuality, etc., but as Bianca just said, diversity of thought and also sector diversity. So as someone who's worked across multiple sectors, do you believe it's important to have accountancy and finance teams that have varied sector backgrounds? And if so, why?
Well, I think that sometimes sector experience can be important, but I find in my background, which is treasury rather than straight finance, it really doesn't matter. There is a portion of your knowledge and your experience that's going to be portable to any, you know, one person's GL isn't any different than, I mean, you know, granted, there are different systems or whatever, but, you know, the process of doing your finance work is not all that different. It's just the footprint of the company and something like that can drive a bit of difference. But I find that it would really benefit most companies to sort of reflect the world at large and have, you know, the diversity. It's very common to hire in your own image, and people have to be reminded that wait a minute, you know, we should sort of throw this open to everybody, and maybe they won't have the most perfect background, but they can bring sort of a different twist to the business and the department and the organization as a whole. So I think that's important. I find over the last, I've been here since the late 90s, and I used to be the only woman in the room in many, many meetings. And that's the point in time that over the last 20 years, it's changed a great deal in treasury departments and in the bankers that are calling on us. You know, there's been a lot more diversity in every part of the business. So, I mean, I think so there's more opportunity, I'd say, in treasury and in banking than there was years ago. But I think it really, I think it would really benefit to the company as a whole, you know, to have a diverse workforce that reflects the world that we're operating in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's good hearing actually from you, as you were saying, like you being the only woman in the room in the past, and how far that's come as well. Obviously still a long way to go, but still it is good that it's come a long way. Nice. So yeah, next I was going to come to you, Dauda. So slightly on a new topic. Something that we wanted to touch on is training and qualification preferences, which can sometimes hinder diverse hiring and inclusive cultures, I think. With this in mind, how are you seeing the pathway to becoming an accountant develop?
There's a lot of changes and drivers for these changes. I think just to set the landscape, I think starting with the traditional pathway. So ordinarily as an aspiring to become an accountant means joining a Big Four or an accounting practice, completing your exams. And if you're not already employed, hopefully get an accounting job after that. This placed a lot of importance on having a string of letters after your name. And in many cases, the Big Four on your CV also made a lot of a difference. But what I think is that expectations are changing. Some drivers we can talk about just very briefly are like the rising cost of education is making something twice about higher learning. If you couple that with the fact that there's some quarters where graduates aren't necessarily prepared for the workplace, then it brings about the age-old debate: is work experience the preferred attribute for employers, or do qualifications still highlight the best candidate? Now, before I break this down even further, I think it's very, very important we appreciate the significance of degrees and accounting qualifications. And in fact, if we just think about the global pass rates for the strategic professional paper for ACCA, it's slightly just over 30%. So it kind of signifies how important the technical knowledge and understanding into becoming an accountant is. So it's a well-respected profession. But at the same time, if we just stick to degrees, getting degree qualifications used to be a major deciding factor in who gets the job. But I think as more and more people have gained degrees, employers are now questioning and becoming less impressed on the whole and focusing more on what experience do you have. But irrespective of where you side on this debate, I think what we can all agree on is that there's advantages to each pathway that you take. And I think the ideal from my perspective is a combination of both. And what I see is that there's a rise in universities offering placements, and often this is referred to as sandwich courses. And I think sandwich courses are great for the combination of just giving, aspiring accountants good theory, knowledge, and good rigor as well. I'm a living testament of that, seeing that I was fortunate to navigate through industries which all started from a sandwich degree that included a work placement. Another thing that's changing is companies are also being more creative in how they attract future talent. They're offering more internships, they're offering more apprenticeship programs as well. But when you step back from all of this, however, you'll see that the comfort blanket of simply seeing an individual with the exact match of an experience or a job spec that has prerequisites means that in most circumstances, employers are still swinging for a perfect match on a CV, which is what I think really needs to be challenged. One important point I think Bianca set out in the beginning was the direction of travel. And I just want to touch on that because there's a digital evolution, and I call it evolution, not revolution, because we've been on this journey for some time. But if I cast people's minds back to, the advent of Excel being introduced to accountants, that created a new breed of accountants, which was kind of, accountants that could use spreadsheets to produce accounts. If you fast track that to today, there's a big ground shift towards how do we even digitize more of our processes in finance? But also this direction of travel is leading to more companies relying on data to understand their customers. What does that really translate to? It's changing the business models for most companies. So as a result of business models changing, you've got finance functions having to respond to new demands and having to be more agile to respond and find new ways of working. So there's almost like most finance functions are going through a reset. And I think with that comes the change in roles, the skills or new skills that are required for accountants to have. They need to expand that knowledge. That knowledge extends all the way to technological advancements. And herein lies the opportunity for more diversity. And another point that was made earlier was, we're talking about the diversity of thought, diversity of experience, and diversity of perspective. And that's what's needed to really reshape the future of the finance function.
Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of people can, we've kind of summed up a lot of what we've said already as well, just really well. So it's good. I appreciate that. And actually moving on to like flowing in quite nicely, Nadine, going to come to you. So sort of following on from Dowda's points, we know there are innovative ways now that Big Four consultancies hire and retain new like audit trainees, people that are going to become accountants in the future. So what are Deloitte doing to ensure an excellent employee journey?
That's a very good question, Perrin. So at Deloitte, there are several things, and I guess most organizations do this to make sure that they have a fantastic employee experience. So Perrin, you mentioned earlier around, diversity of thought, people feeling included, and when you feel included, you can speak up in meetings. Psychological safety is something that we all recognize. At Deloitte, we are always, pushing and making sure that people can be their best selves and, do their best work. And this is one of the things that I think is important when we speak about the employee experience, making everyone feel included, and making sure that everybody has the opportunity to thrive. One of the other points I wanted to bring up was around recognition. And I guess we all want to have recognition when we go to work. And one of the things that we do at Deloitte is have, a thank you wall, something very simple, but publicly just coming out and saying thank you to your peers and colleagues when you've done a fantastic job, and just having that recognition. So something small about having a big impact that has, a huge impact on the employee experience. Learning and development is something that's huge at Deloitte. Consistently learning, continuously learning, and developing our skills is key to our culture at Deloitte. And again, it enhances the employee experience, being able to have opportunities, being able to learn and develop your skills further. And for me, I'm always, looking on our intranet to see what course I can get onto next. And for me, that's part of, one of the benefits I think at being at Deloitte is the continuous learning that is open to me. Also, I guess with the current climate in terms of COVID and home working, I guess having a sense of community is also very key in the employee experience. At Deloitte, we have over 12 diversity networks where people can come together and have that sense of community. And recently across the firm, we've had coffee clubs, which is fantastic, where people can come together virtually and just speak and connect virtually, which I think is really having a fantastic impact on our employees' well-being, as well as the overall employee experience as well. And then work-life balance. Even pre-COVID, we have the opportunity to work agile. Many of us worked, a few days at the office, a few days at home. So having that flexibility, again, is another key factor, I guess, when it comes to the employee experience.
Yeah, thank you, Nadine. It's good to hear about because Deloitte's such a big business, and obviously it's one of the first names you think of if you're thinking of accountancy and finance, and it's good to know that there are a lot of initiatives. I like the idea of the thank you part. We do something slightly similar and our wrap up meetings on Fridays where you can shout out someone that's helped you or something like that. And I think it is a good way of making sure people are included. Actually coming back to you on again and just kind of carrying on from that, what would you say? I think it's quite nice to have people on this webinar probably want to know some tips from someone like you. What is a key tip to ensure people are fostering a feeling of inclusion within a business?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And I guess it's something that we are continuously working on. It's all about engaging with our people, surveys, focus groups, various sessions to really listen to our people. And I think that is key, because then once you listen, you can take the appropriate action to improve their employee experience and make sure that they do feel included as well. Inclusion, I guess, is about the satisfaction of two fundamental human needs. It's one for belonging and safety, another for uniqueness. And people derive their self-esteem and feeling of safety from belonging. If you feel like you belong, you're more likely to stay and retain staff. So that's very, very important. And at Deloitte, it's huge, and it encompasses all that we do, and it's very much part of our culture and part of our shared global values is to make sure that we have inclusion at the heart of everything that we do. We know that having a diverse workforce, improves performance. It brings better results for the business. We spoke about diversity of thought and how that, helps, coming up with creative solutions, etc. And we want to make sure that our environment is inclusive, so that we can bring, the value to our clients as well. Having that diversity of thought is key for us. Hope that answered the question.
Yeah, no, I did. Thank you. It's good to hear that, and this is actually something that I wanted to focus on quite heavily in this webinar, because there's there's so much to talk about across diversity, equity and inclusion. There's like a million things that we could speak about, but particularly on this, I wanted to talk about inclusion, and especially now we're working remotely. Obviously it's harder, I suppose, to ensure people feel included. So I'm going to pretty much ask the same question to everyone. So I'll come to you first, Bianca, and the same question kind of goes to you. What do you feel like works for you to nurture inclusion within your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think, even though we're all talking about inclusion, I think the challenges in a business of our size versus a Deloitte are obviously quite different. So I think, inclusion at that sort of scale is difficult. I think for us, it was still a challenge, but maybe, easier to see how you can kind of be a bit more inclusive in a smaller organization. But that said, it is something that we've actually focused on quite a lot in the last 12 months, not just because of COVID, but we had a sort of double whammy in that we acquired another business at the same time as we sort of all started working from home. So, we were very conscious of wanting to make our new colleagues who were basically just, part of the team overnight feel like they were part of a team and not sort of left out. So we rolled out a lot of initiatives across the organization. We did these talks where we're us as a leadership team. We did our life in 15 photos, which was, terribly embarrassing if you're giving that presentation, but it's enjoyable if it's someone else and you're watching it. So I think that was a nice way to just kind of, give people a sense of what the culture is like in the business and sort of give a real understanding of the people that are leading the organization. We then did a bunch of other talks on, career stories or the company's history, like deep dives on our products, and they were open to everyone, not just to to our new colleagues. So it was a great way to sort of remind everyone of what the organization is about and to feel like you're all kind of striving towards the same things. We also we use Slack as our messaging tool internally, and we set up there's an integration called Donut, which randomly pairs you with one person across the organization. We were doing it, I think, like every week, but you can change the frequency. But pairing you with someone to have a one-to-one chat, and that was great because you can also, it's the kind of thing that you can also do while you go out for a walk. And so we're also trying to encourage people to not just be inside all day every day, because that's a bit of a worry, but I digress. But that was a great way to sort of get people who don't normally work with each other because they're in completely different functions or teams to actually get to know who else is in the business, as you would if you were in the office and you're popping into the kitchen to make yourself a tea. You chat to the person there, but obviously in this environment you can't do that. We also have a few sort of social interest groups. We have like Parents at Salary Finance, Pride at Salary Finance, Together at Salary Finance, which is specifically dedicated to sort of how to create an inclusive culture in the business. And these groups get consulted every time that we want to make some sort of policy change or a decision about how we shape for example, like the future of work. Once we're not going to be hopefully entirely homebound, what should that look like? So we regularly consult our groups to get that perspective, and that's really how we kind of try and make the environment inclusive. That's at an organizational level. And then for me personally, within my team, I don't have a huge team, so it's easier for me, I think, to get that sort of inclusivity, because it's easier to get everybody on a call. We do these optional sort of pre-work check-ins with each other, and we do them twice a week, but we just drop in, have a coffee, before we start the day and don't talk about work. We just talk about whatever we're watching on Netflix or, you know, whatever it may be. But it's just a nice way to like be there for each other and just, I think that has created quite an inclusive kind of feeling.
There's loads of good things to take from that, actually. I thought, like, I like the idea of the 15 photos of, that's so funny. We did a quiz, like we were doing quiz, you know, when quizzes were the thing last year, we did quiz it like a Trenovo quiz internally, and one of the questions was like, who's like, guess who this baby is, and we were sending in baby photos and everyone had to guess, and it was really funny. Like some of the photos were so good. So yeah, and it's a nice way of kind of bringing people together and making things a bit more personal, especially like senior leadership team if you've got new starters or people that are younger, like trainees maybe. So yeah, no, I really like that. And yeah, kind of same question, Sean, I'm going to go to you. What have you used?
I have used successfully the thank you wall, or it's sort of employee of the month kind of thing, but it's trying to be less structured than that. But thank you. Also, at a delivery, one of my previous clients, they had new joiners just about every week or every couple weeks. So everyone would get photographs of all the new joiners, and once a month you had to take a new joiner out for coffee, just in the breakout room, you know, just somebody in your totally different department than yours, which I thought was really interesting. And it ended up helping me later down the line because there was a question that came up about this area that I just, you know, by chance had a coffee with a guy in this area. So I had a contact, and the bigger the company you work at, the more disparate the various departments are. They could be on different floors, they could be in different buildings or whatever. So I think that's really helpful. Also, as we go on, I think that Dauda touched on this briefly, we're going to be getting more and more away from the transactional, and it's going to be all, there are computer systems that are going to do all the transactional. No one will have to do spreadsheets or anything. It'll all be about review and looking at things. And I think that it's a real opportunity to get someone in with a slightly different skill set in the finance function. I've done this in Treasury, pulled in someone with no Treasury experience and said, okay, this is our system, you know, this is what we need to have it do, you know, can you work it out and have it done that? And then give them a bit of visibility by having them do a presentation to maybe include, you know, the management 2 layers up, just to say, oh, you know, look at, you know, so-and-so has come in and they've made this work much better than we expected, and this is how it does, and, you know, share screens, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that works a lot towards getting inclusion. There's inclusion at, you know, sort of the group level, and there's also inclusion so that people a bit higher than your team know who they are and vaguely what they do. So I think I love the idea of the coffee club, though. I think that's a great idea. And I have seen Donut. I've never worked with it. It sounds great too. So I'm writing these down.
If it's Donut Club, do you actually like eat donuts? Is that the plan? Because
no, it's software.
But I like that idea. I'm going to test that next.
Because yeah, I'd be into that. I mean, it wouldn't be good for my teeth or my weight, but yeah, be into donuts, daily donuts. Okay, cool. So I suppose last but not least, Dauda, same question to you. What tips would you give to help foster inclusion?
I feel like I can talk for hours about ideas on this, but I think a lot of examples have been mentioned already, some of which is, you know, the exciting things we've got going on at Brit. But to simplify sort of and sum up, really, I would say, you know, for D&I, in my mind, the first thing or the first tip I would ask everyone to do is to put a why before the D&I, right? So, and the why is a double meaning, because understanding the why helps you develop a care factor, why this is important and is necessary for how we work within accountancy and finance. But the why I'm also referring to is the you. I think we all have a own personal experiences, our own biases, which arguably is going to be different from somebody else. But part of what you would need to do is explore your own learning, enlighten yourself, and be prepared, not just to, throw ideas and say we can do copy, but be prepared to sort of implement those ideas as well and see it from ideation to implementation. So I would start with the why for various reasons that I've just mentioned. The D to me in diversity, or it's really delivering through change. The fact that we're even having this conversation now is something different. It's a change in how we've operated within accountancy and finance. So opening the dialogue, feeling empowered to be able to deliver the change that you want to see. The I would say is you will eventually inspire others around you through taking action. And by literally championing and advocating inclusion, you ultimately end up with, what I've mentioned is the why first, the D and the I. But let's take a moment and rearrange those letters. And actually it reads DIY, which is something we can all recognize as do it yourself. It's very easy, I think, to sort of point out at what the problems are in sort of making sure inclusivity matters within accountancy and finance, but ultimately it starts with an action. It starts with you. It starts with you challenging your recruitment practices within your finance function. It starts with you opening the dialogue and saying, I want to learn and I want to create inclusion. What can we do? How many finance functions are embracing sort of the Women in Finance Charter, for example? We've talked about, at some point in time, there were a limited number of women you would find in the department. That's changing, but these are all things that, can start with you just generating an idea and putting it on the table.
Can I just come in there on what Dowda said, Perrin?
Yeah, go ahead.
About the dialogue. So something that we done last year within our multicultural network, we hosted a session following the killing of George Floyd. And it was run by the network. Well, we just said, let's just have this session. And during this session, we had over 900 of our employees join this call. We did not expect to have so many people join. But it was just an open session, just our Black colleagues sharing their experiences. And for me, that was just so impactful because everyone was in the conversation and everybody was learning and wanted to understand more. And that dialogue, just having the conversation was just so powerful that it's kind of switched, the switch has gone on and change is now starting to happen. So I am all for the power of conversation, sharing, and having that dialogue with everybody in the room and not just in our small little silo. So yeah, I totally agree with what you said there, Dowda.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point actually, because we've spoken about this I think before, but for example, with recruiters, like we talk to so many people every day, we're always on the phone. And just even inviting people to this event, then saying, what do you think about this topic? It's just a conversation, but it's going, round to different people, obviously, yeah, my network say is accountants, but they might talk to then someone else in their team and it moves around. It's not just talking to your friends who are already interested in this or have a viewpoint. It's not just talking like you were just saying there, Nadine. You might have thought to that only people that were in that committee or in that network were going to turn up, but actually 900 people turned up and they were from all over Deloitte. So because you can have those conversations with your friends and your peers who already you're kind of preaching to the choir then in a way, because it's really important. We actually did it's the first time we've done it internally at Trenovo as well, on Monday when it was for International Women's Day. We did an internal webinar, so it was just Trenovo. Everyone jumped on at the end of the day, and we had some of the senior women in Trenovo on the panel, including our head of HR, and they shared some of their experiences that they've had as women, where some of the things that have happened is that it's just really, people just wouldn't have realized, and they're probably not going to tell everyone all the time, but I think everyone really valued that in the whole company. I'm kind of hearing them share their experiences and what they've kind of overcome or been through in the past. So the dialogue is
stories
huge.
are so powerful, personal stories. So powerful.
Yeah. definitely. So that was actually all of my questions to everyone. I know Dowda, you wanted to.
Yeah, there's something I'm really keen to learn more about. And if I may ask you, the question is, from your perspective, Perrin, what are some of the new creative and deliberate practices being explored in recruitment to help employers find talent in finance and accounting?
Mm-hmm. So this is something that I could probably like bang on for as well for ages. So I might be on this for a long time, but I do think recruitment agencies, as I just mentioned, like we play a big part in this whole process, and I think diversity and inclusion and equity is on the agenda now for a lot of recruitment agencies. I don't know what everyone else does, because obviously I'm at Trenovo, but I can sort of talk through our journey, because I think that will probably represent actually quite a lot of other agencies as well and other recruiters. So D&I has always been something that we've taken quite seriously, and it's something that we've always spoken about, but there was a real catalyst for us that played a huge part in actually kind of changing how we strategize and move forward. And that was something that we were part of, which is called the Fast Futures program. And it's really illustrated a way that we can now work moving forward. So for those that don't know, Bianca knows about the Fast Futures program because Salary Finance are a sponsor, but Fast Futures is a program that we exclusively partnered with Avado on. So Avado do like the CIPD training. And it was essentially to get entry-level people, like young people, into training programs at a variety of like big, well-known brands who were the sponsors. So the Trenovo team who managed the applications had specific training, which I'll come to in a minute, and they had to stick to a script when qualifying the applicants. So there was no CV, just a name and a number. So you actually couldn't see what uni they'd gone to, if they'd had any work experience, like anything, you couldn't see that. And this meant that the decisions were made more on competencies and behaviours as opposed to what uni you went to, or unconsciously like where someone grew up, what area they grew up in. So the results from Fast Futures was actually amazing. So there was thousands of applicants and thousands of people that went onto these training programs, but the results showed that the targets were essentially all hit, and that was that the people that got the roles were representative of the UK. So it didn't mean that anyone was like left out. It just meant that it was representative. So it wasn't. So it was just equal. There was about 50 female, 50 male, and there was a lot of different categories that were in there as well. I can share it with people because it's kind of easier to see on a sort of page. If anybody wants it, just let me know afterwards. But basically, the reason I'm talking about Fast Futures is because we realised that adopting these methods and then seeing the results, it may have seemed quite extreme at the beginning, but actually is very innovative. It's agile, and especially for entry level positions, they are the future. These people are going to be the future, and it really works well. So off the back of Fast Futures and how we worked on that, we've sort of re-strategized a lot and repositioned our whole E&I function. And that includes, as a recruitment agency, unconscious bias training and upskilling for us that we can give to others as well. Training on job advert writing. And so it can appeal to all, because I don't know if other people have kind of ever touched on this before, but there's certain words that sometimes are more appealing to masculine like words, and it might put females off things, and vice versa. So that's something that we get training in. There's actually also like AI tools that I think we're piloting one at the moment, which is called Textio. So there's like tech out there that can do it as well. The name blind recruitment, which is essentially removing anything associated with gender, age, address, location, school, university, which is kind of like what Fast Futures was, but it obviously still includes a skill sets for more experienced candidates. And actually there's resourcing tools that we use, a tool which I'm a big fan of called Sourcebreaker, and they have they've recently got a new feature that removes all the names from job boards. So you just see their CV. I mean, I don't think just removing names from CVs is the answer to all of this, but it's a step in like removing certain aspects of a CV and keeping it more about the skills is good. And also something that we've been doing, which has been really great, is working with our charity partners. Some of them have their own job boards. So we work with the National Autistic Society, and we can actually use their job boards to like recruit essentially via them, which is really great. Encourage flexible working. I know that's something that's kind of already happening, but that brings in people from different locations, like maybe better for working parents. And also the last thing, I know I've said quite a lot is diversity monitoring, which is something that we're going to really start pushing, I think, which is essentially encouraging candidates to complete diversity monitoring forms. So the data collection is voluntary, but it does allow us to monitor like demographic data, and then we can then track, and data in the end kind of doesn't lie. We can sort of track how what CVs are being put forward for a role, who's getting the interviews for first and then second stage, and then who's actually getting the job. And then we can actually use that to present back to our clients as well. But I think my final point, and this is quite a big but, ultimately, us as recruitment agencies and every other agency can do all of the above and more. And it will only work if the employers and our clients are also on board. When businesses decide on their PSL, they should understand like where the preferred suppliers stand on DE&I and what they do. When they speak to recruiters and engage with us to help with recruiting roles, we want to help. We're consultants. We don't want to just send CVs. We want to consult and we want to help. So we need to speak and actually partner together more. And that comes a lot. We want to do that, but sometimes it comes from the client that need to partner a bit more, and ensure we're on the same page for everything. And because ultimately recruitment is a services industry. We serve clients to their wants and needs, and recruitment is very competitive. There's a lot of recruitment agencies out there. So if the hiring manager isn't educated or willing, and the education does need to come from the business as well, there could be multiple agencies potentially working on a role, and unless all of them are doing exactly the same thing for DE&I, as like same standards, we, for example, could present a really great diverse shortlist, and we could do that constantly, but we could still go out of business, like if our CVs aren't being chosen because other agency CVs are being chosen. But that comes from overarching the hiring manager and the person who's making those decisions, and that's why we need to have these conversations so they're educated, and then we can all partner in a better way. So I think that's my kind of view on it. I know that was quite a long, but I hope that helps a bit, Dada.
That absolutely helps. You touched on so many points, Perrin, and you actually answered a couple of my follow-up questions as well. But I think you put it out rightly, because recruitment agencies are in such a unique position, servicing two clients, really. You've got the employers and you're servicing the clients, which is the candidates seeking the employment as well. I think all of the practices you've talked about and ideas, even talking about technology coming about to help with this process is great, almost for the selection process. But then, how do we influence the sort of clients you're serving on one end, the employers, on some of the practices that they're employing as part of the recruitment process? So, to give you a specific example, it's not rare to hear a comment around, cultural fit. And I think breaking down those sort of viewpoints and even understanding what that means is something that, recruiters are well positioned to try and influence that, obviously balancing it with the business model of what you do. I think that's where that agency theory comes in. But ultimately, I think, through a joint effort with potentially other recruitment agencies, as you say, it's about partnership. But these conversations, this type of dialogue is exactly what's going to sort of trigger the kind of mindset shift that we need to be able to allow inclusivity to really become sort of business imperative in finance and accounting. But thank you. That answered all of my questions.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I think my kind of main point is like agencies often, they want to do a lot and they're interested in all this stuff, but it's a joint effort as well. And but it's really nice. Like, I'm always really happy when I see businesses like actively promoting the topic, having conversations and talking to us about it. We've definitely seen across the board across everywhere that we recruit, but within accountancy and finance, we've had quite a lot, some actually coming back, some clients come back and saying we want a more diverse shortlist. And then we have to say, like, when you say diverse, like, what do you want? Like, and then suddenly those conversations happen and then it becomes a really good partnership. So I think that's really important, and it's really good to see that it's starting to move forward. And it's kind of, I think this year and last year have been amazing for it to push this. So yeah, I don't know if anyone else wants to kind of jump in on that about recruitment.
Just that it's interesting to hear all the tools that are available to you now and what you guys are doing about it. I think I expect all of these things will become just normal practice as opposed to like this big innovation. And that's going to be exciting because I think the recruitment process has been broken for a while. Like, we all know it's imperfect, and imperfect is putting it lightly. I think it's very difficult to hire, to find the right people. And so, it's an interesting space to watch.
Yeah, definitely. I know I think recruitment is kind of on a bit of a journey at the moment, like as an industry. And yeah, you're right. These kind of things, none of them are perfect yet, but it's like once they do become better, it will become the norm, like you said. So I suppose we're kind of not far off wrapping up actually in terms of like Q&A. I know somebody has posted in already in the chat saying like just wanted to check if there's a Q&A at the end. So yeah, there definitely is. And unless there's anything else any of the panelists wanted to kind of comment on, I just want to say thank you so much, guys, for being part of this. It's been really great, and I hope it's the first of many. So we did have 2 last poll questions that should pop up that you guys can answer, and then we'll go to the Q&A sort of straight after, which is in the chat box. I don't know if the poll questions are actually automatic or not. I don't know if they come automatically, but yeah, I mean, we can open they'll probably come up at some point, but there's I think there's a few. I'm seeing, I don't know if Lucy can help, but I've seen kind of a few hands. Let me just go to the Q&A box one moment. Okay, there's loads of questions. Sorry, I've literally missed that. Okay, so we start first. So a question from Rowan. Said, I agree with the point of cognitive diversity. However, how would you counter the argument that we're just finding the best person for the job? E.g., they have the most experience, qualifications, so we're just going for them. I don't know who wants to answer that. Is there anyone that wants to?
I can give that a go.
Yeah.
So I think, you can't ignore experience. And of course, you're trying to find the best person for the job. I think the question is, what makes that person the best person for the job, other than just what you see on the CV, which is not everything, right? So I think the more senior you become, the more your CV becomes like important in that sense, and so your actual direct experience kind of influences the jobs that are going to be open to you. But I think there's a whole sort of section of the workforce where that's not really the case, because you can't actually tell everything from a CV. So it's not about hiring someone who who you don't think is gonna be the best person for the job to do the job. It's about broadening that definition of who is the best person for the job.
Yeah, I think that goes back a little bit to what I was kind of mentioning with Fast Futures, and that it's about the kind of competencies and behaviours, as opposed to necessarily like exactly where somebody may have kind of come from, if that makes sense. Okay, cool. I hope that helped, Rowan. And then we've got a question from Talent. With most accounting/finance qualifications being international and the skills being cross-functional or easily transferable, what are the diversity concerns with hiring from an international pool, or what are common challenges when hiring or post-hiring? Maybe Nadine, you can answer from a Deloitte perspective. So that one was for you, Nadine.
I wish I could, but in this, I couldn't. I couldn't answer that in terms of. I do know we recruit internationally, but in terms of, I shouldn't go into any further detail. It's not my expertise, I'm afraid.
I know you're inclusion rather than recruitment, aren't you?
Yeah, I can give that a go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, you can tell from my accent I'm not locally born. And I think that the challenge is hiring someone internationally is not the skill set, really. It's the requirements of citizenship or your work permit, all that type of thing. I get people from America contacting me all the time saying, gosh, how can I do what you did? How can I come over and work in London? And I said, well, you have to get a company to sponsor you, which is what I did, and there has to be, it's a long, fairly torturous process, and you need someone has the contacts and is willing to pay the bill for it, or else it'll be expensive, and all your experience would have been outside of the UK. And I think it's an easier thing for a multinational company who perhaps has a foot in many different parts of the world. They would be more open to that, an intra-company transfer, or even someone who has a huge French or German organization, has a large presence in one of those European countries or Africa or whatever, and you have experience in that. Obviously, that would work in your favor. But as far as hiring from an international pool, there's a whole level of complexity that I think most hiring managers just don't want to deal with.
Yeah, it's like the admin of doing the sponsorship. They just think, I think that's what I've seen as well in the past. And that they will offer the sponsorship, but only if it's for a skill set that they literally cannot find.
Exactly.
Yeah, locally, yeah. No, I hope that kind of helps answer. Okay, so we've got another one from Paul, who said, what advice could you give somebody who is committed to staying in a business but has found themselves in a team that isn't inclusive? I don't know who wants to go. Yeah, go on, Dana.
Karen, I will firstly empathize with that individual, because it's a difficult position to find yourself in, right? Again, if nothing you remember from this conversation, or at least from my point of view, I think the DIY aspect, meaning that it really starts with you being able to take action first. It's very difficult if you're already trying to do that. But I think we have to focus on the ability to influence and focus on making an impact. And I think if you're finding yourself in a company that you genuinely care about, and this is really difficult for employees that might find themselves having a care factor for a company, but you're surrounded with people who failed or don't prioritize inclusion because they would easily put other priorities on top of it. But I want to emphasize that for companies to do well and do better, being inclusive is a necessary part of all of the agenda on the business priority list. But I think what I can say in terms of tips that you can sort of explore is, try and form allyship outside of that circle. There will be other people in an organization who care about inclusion probably as much as you do, and try and form those allyships. There's people outside of your organization that equally are trying to put a real effort in making a difference. Again, engage with those people, because I think there's a power in numbers, but also don't be deflated too easily, because it is a challenging thing to try and pursue. Trying to convince somebody to care about something that they didn't previously care about is very difficult, but it will take long hours. It will take grafting and articulating your ideas in the best way possible to make sure that you're focusing on delivering value as opposed to just raising grievances that most people wouldn't know what to do with. So I think it's a lot of work, and I'm sure in the networking session after this we can discuss that in more detail. But I would like to think anyone should be able to make influence or make an impact, and finding allyship not just in your immediate circle, but outside in your macro circle as well, could help you go a long way.
That was really good advice. Yeah, thank you, Dada, for that. And I hope that helps. Okay, I've got another question. There's quite a lot of questions actually. Good, we've got enough time. So this one's actually for you, Nadine. So Talent's asked, you spoke about the power of conversation, which is true. However, have you seen a tangible impact from such dialogue? A lot of the time, Black people feel disempowered in the workplace, as their concerns raised often do not lead to any tangible responses, such as a dismissal or consequences for people who have discriminated against them. And then continued, she said, including issues such as sexism, ageism, etc. What is the extent of consequences for such? I believe that people are more likely to speak up if they believe that them voicing their experience will bring a change.
Yeah, good question. And I guess so the tangible action that came out of that Let's Talk session that we had last year was our Black Action Plan. And so this is a plan that has come out from Deloitte as a firm, stating, what are we going to do to address this issue? And there's been continuous conversations across the firm around inclusion, specifically race, and people are being more open. Individuals are taking responsibility and starting to educate themselves as well, which is key. Recently, we set up an allies community so people can, those people who want to learn and want to take action and be a proactive ally, know what to do, know what actions they can take. So there's lots of tangible actions just coming out from that 2.5 hour conversation we had. So many actions have come out of that, and already we are starting to see a change.
Yeah, that's really good. And it's one of those things where it's like I think as well with Deloitte, they've got people like you in the team that can actually then put these actions into place. And I think other businesses maybe don't actually have a strong enough, maybe HR kind of function. Yeah.
And I don't want to say it's just me, Perrin. It's across our central teams, HR's involved, recruitment's involved, fractions, every single central team you can think of is involved in the Black Action Plan, and it's spoken about as BAU. It's not an add-on now. It's in every conversation that we're having.
Yeah, that's so good. It's so powerful. It's like, I hope that helps answer your question, Talent, and that other companies will kind of hear and see that and do that as well. So got some more to go through. There's a question from Lauji. Why are companies so particular on sector experience, even for contractors? This has been the case since the financial crash of 2008 to 2009. I would have thought that generally good contractors would be very applicable, very adaptable to change and can hit the ground running. Surely this means that companies are foregoing diversity of experience. I don't know who wants to take that one.
I'll just spare a few words on this one. So I think it's all about speed of delivery, especially when it comes to contractors, right? Most finance functions find themselves overburdened as is with, and this is the point around embracing the opportunities. And I think Bianca opened up with this, which is, the business is changing. There's new demands for finance. We already have BAU activities that keep us occupied for the most part of the day. If we're talking about additional strategic initiatives that need to be operationalized, it's add-on work. And so when you're getting contractors, you're kind of keen on making sure if you don't have capacity or bandwidth within your team, you're getting somebody who can come in and help you. Now, when we're talking about diverse perspectives, experiences, and so on, it's very important we open our minds to not just looking for that perfect match, which I talked about earlier, because it's very easy to do that, because it's almost, I would expect this person to just come and hit the ground running, and you might find or hear a lot of finance people saying that, or managers that are recruiting within finance. But to give it a very brief answer, I think that's the motive why most recruitment or recruitment of roles within finance, especially contract roles, you would want to get somebody who has the relevant experience or any other prerequisites that would mean that you probably don't have to spend more time that you can't spare to train somebody to do that. That's not to say that's a valid reason why companies should do that. I think, it's a bit of a balance, and I think we need to be able to get people who are qualified to do jobs, who are getting jobs based on merit. It's not sort of anything we should be advocating to say just because we're missing representation, we should start sprinkling color. It needs to be based on somebody being able to do the job, which is why people spend a number of years studying for their qualification. So bearing that all in mind, I think it's making sure that if you are competing for roles, or if you're trying to get into companies, you demonstrate your experience, you're able to, through the process, make sure that people understand you have a lot more to offer. And you can bring that value into the organization, even if your credentials don't necessarily match the job spec.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to make. And I think the thing that's been difficult, particularly this past year, especially with contractors, obviously I do contract recruitment, is that a lot of contractors were let go of their contracts in March last year. And then the market's there's not been many jobs. Last year there weren't many jobs, but the contract jobs did start kind of coming in, because if there's uncertainty in the market and people don't want to hire permanent, they'll hire contractors. But the problem, or not necessarily problem, but what happened and what is still kind of happening, is that the candidates that were ending up there was so much competition between candidates for each role that came up, because there weren't that many roles, but a lot of candidates, a lot of contractors. It's like you had to tick every single box to get a job, like boxes that weren't even known to be boxes when the job spec came out for a contract, and contract moves so quickly. And what Dowda said as well, like, it's kind of like needing someone to help you. It's like so easy to just go for the person that's like literally been at your competitor or has worked for you in the past or something like that, and on a contract basis. And I think that's what's happened, particularly in the past year with contract. And again, I'm not saying it's something that is necessarily like good or useful, but that's just the reality of what's been happening. And that is starting to change though, because I think that the market's picking back up again, and people are getting jobs again, so it won't be such a, there will be a bit less competition basically. So I hope that helped.
I can also add to that if you have someone who's worked in the sector that you want to hire in, they will know what the competition is doing. They will know if there are any specific tricks and trades or tax structuring or something like that. In my job, it's very helpful to have that experience. Just as Dowda was saying, when you're in a high stress, we have plenty of work already and we just need to get this done kind of situation. So I think, as I agree, the market is loosening up. There are more jobs now that we have a clear path to some sort of normalcy. I think that people will get hired and that will calm down again. And I think more people will be able to get, without specific sector stigma.
Yeah, I think as well, I know, sorry to keep on this topic, but I think that as a kind of constructive feedback on that as well from a recruiter, I would say the two key things I would say to do as a job seeker, especially as a contractor, is hone in on your niches. Like if you've used a certain system loads, highlight that on your CV, make that obvious. Recruiters search for keywords when we search for CVs, when we search for people on LinkedIn or whatever. So we will pick that up. If there's a project for a certain system, we will pick that up. That's just one example. Or if it's you've done loads of work with like US GAAP, put that on, like these certain skills, really try and hone in on niches that you have that could be transferable. And then you'll be the person that kind of then gets those roles. And rather than trying to go for like everything and then hoping something sticks, it's better to kind of try and be a bit more niche in this market. And the other thing I would say, which I'm a big fan of, and I really always preach it, is to try and get recommendations. Like if you're a contractor and you've contracted at multiple places before, ask someone to just write you a letter, write you a LinkedIn recommendation. If a recruitment consultant's involved and they can take a verbal recommendation, whatever it is, that also really helps in this market. And I've done that in like every process this year. And it's been a huge help with people getting a job, that get it at interview process. And then there's literally a recommendation right there of how that person has worked. So even if your skills aren't exactly the same as the job spec, if they've seen that your last manager said, oh, they're such a team player, they always do this, you might get like ahead of someone that doesn't do that. And so yeah, that's kind of my constructive feedback. I hope that helped. We probably have time for like one more question, I think, because then it will be 1:15. But if there's any questions that aren't answered, we will put them out at another time and then put them in the key takeaways document, which we will write at the end of this. But I'll do one last question. So this is from Elisa Jamay. I don't know if she's related to you, Dowda, but same surname.
She's my sister.
So hi, Dowda's sister. So Elisa's asked, building a diverse and inclusive environment begins when all leaders and managers are on board. How are the leaders in your organizations held accountable for diversity and inclusion in the workplace? I think it's a really good question. I don't know who wants to take that on.
Should I start?
Yeah, go on, Nadine.
I mean, all of our partners and directors are going through, they do inclusive leadership training anyway. And on top of that, they're now doing race sessions. So this has been rolled out to all of our partners and directors. As I said, we're still having the continuous conversations anyway. And as part of our Black Action Plan, they have targets. So all partners will have targets. So that is how we are holding them accountable. And, having regular catch-ups and making sure that we are on track to where we need to be. So yes, we are holding our partners to account in that way.
Now, I'll add, just in case she asked me this question again later and said, I want to hear your point as well. I think another thing that is a metric for how successful leaders are doing in this space is the old employee satisfaction survey. So employees are key stakeholders in any business. We can't forget that. So to have a sort of survey, anonymized survey, and seeing the responses of how your organization truly feels about your leadership is something that's really close to many leaders. So I think that's another example, in addition to the targets. If you take insurance and Lloyd's, for example, Lloyd's of London will set some aspirational targets for all of its participants to aim for. And I think if you want to be one of the leading members of Lloyd's, you want to sort of excel and demonstrate that you're paving the way and leading the way as well.
That's actually how we're trying to track that. I mean, it's not the only way, but it's the way we're doing it currently. We also recently rolled out diversity and inclusion training across the organization, and sort of as a follow-on from that, thought about how to hold ourselves accountable for these goals. And I don't think we have like the answer yet, and it's a journey that we're kind of beginning now. But what we are doing is we made it one of our we have these every 6 months we have like big strategic projects that the whole organization is aware of, and we sort of track them and give everybody visibility as to how we're doing against them. And one of them is actually make SF a great place to work. And as part of that, we have a scoring system for a bunch of things. Inclusivity is one of them. So, how included do you feel is one of the questions we do ask in the survey. We track it, on a quarterly basis, and we have like people can put their comments in free text as well. So we're trying to gather that feedback and sort of use that to hold ourselves accountable.
Yeah, and I think that's really great. We do, I think every quarter we do like a Be Heard survey that's anonymous, so we can put like loads of like anything that we want to kind of say in there, which is really helpful. So yeah, all good. So there are a few more questions. I'm really sorry we didn't get time to get through all of them. But yeah, as I said, we can send these questions. I can send them in an email afterwards to the panelists, and then we'll put them in the kind of key takeaway document. And yeah, I mean that's kind of it, guys. And I'm really, really, really so grateful for you guys coming today and doing this, and I think we were able to have a really good discussion, but there's still so much that we could talk about, I'm sure. So yeah, I think it's hopefully not the first of many for anyone else that wants to get involved as well, that's kind of still in the attendees. So I think the next thing that will happen is there'll be 2 last poll questions that will pop up, and then we can go to the anyone that wants to stay on for the networking, which actually takes you into like little like different rooms, so you can have a chance to speak to people directly and discuss further. There is a link now in the chat box. If you go to the chat, and there's a network session. We'll just be on there for the next kind of 15 minutes. I know it's like dinner time as well. So yeah, we'll be on there. I'll be on there definitely. And anyone that wants to join, please do. But yeah, thank you so much, guys.
Pleasure. Thank
you.